Okay, let's get started. Let me get my screens here in the right order. Okay, so Ben and I are going to ping pong back and forth through um, some principles and tactics to use, engaging the community, and then how do we celebrate, and then do a wrap up. As I said earlier, feel free to ask questions as we go through. Between the two of us, we'll take those questions, see if we can answer them the best that we can. And then also, when we get towards the end, I've got some resources to share, some publications on fundraising toolkits that can be helpful. But wanted to put a fun twist on today in providing that fun portion of how we do fundraising. Oops, slides are, yeah, sorry. Um, a lot of the things that we do in Main Street are hard. The things we do, it's economic development. We're working with property owners and business owners and the community and visitors and lots of audiences. And it's sometimes hard to reach those folks. But we do have this fun element to the things that we do in Main Street. And that's what we want to focus on today. As our downtown districts, we're the gathering places, the living rooms for our community. And so we want to provide that space to have fun. And Main Streets love to have fun, as you can see from the photos here. And I could have picked, 50 more photos from our library of fun activities, people enjoying the company of each other, people enjoying the event that's going on. And it's just always brings a little, my heart grows and I get a little tear in my eye when I see activities going on in downtown districts and people are having fun and communicating and being neighborly and all those things that we see in our downtown districts. And so many of the events we do are fundraisers that tie into that. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's get started. We already did this part. Share your name and your community in the chat. We already did that. If you're new to us and just joined us, please put where you're from in the chat just so that other folks can see you and say hello. But now what I'd like you to do in the chat box is when you hear the term fundraising, what do you think? What comes to mind when you hear fundraising? And if you could put those in the chat, we'll give you just a few minutes to do that. Chris says work. Yep. Sometimes it's a lot of work, but very rewarding work. Planning, long hours, hard work, and tired feet. Lots of planning, a lot of work. Yep. A lot of times it's geared around those events, which can be a lot of time and resources attached to fundraising when it comes to events. And we'll talk about that in as part of this presentation. But there's other ways related to fundraising that maybe aren't as much work, but always involves a lot of planning. Okay, so let's get to one more slide on this point before we get to some of the principles. I think it's important to link fun to the mission of our organization. We talk about mission and vision and transformation strategies and those sorts of things, but I think it's important to tie fun to what we do. The people that we want to volunteer and help us with these efforts aren't going to volunteer if it's not a fun place or we're not having fun doing it. Then it's work, as several of you said as comments with fundraising being work. We want to make that work fun. We want people to enjoy what they're doing. We want them to come back and do it again with us. And so I just pulled some companies that have integrated fun into their corporate culture. I'm sure being in the Midwest, a lot of you have flown Southwest Airlines. I always chuckle whenever they are doing those serious safety announcements and they've got a creative crew member who has, made it into a poem or throws in some fun jokes as they're doing that serious safety check, but throwing in some fun stuff related to it. I love digital companies like Google. All of their employee spaces tend to be very fun and creative with games and different things to kind of take the pressure of the day off and have fun at your break or at your lunch. And so integrating that in, I think, is very important. And so how do we think about creating that philosophy within our own organization? All right, so we're going to get into some of the principles and tactics. Ben is going to start us off. So, Ben, just tell me when to advance.
Sounds good. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is why someone should donate to a Main Street organization. And so with this, before you even ask for money from someone, you really have to reach into people's minds and hearts and really sell that story of downtown revitalization. You have to pull on those heartstrings because as we know, there's a lot of people and organizations in our community that are asking for money. And so we have to convey why is the work that we're doing important for the rest of the community and why will it make a difference for our community members? The unfortunate thing about downtown revitalization is we're not necessarily saving puppies. We're not trying to raise money to fund a youth sports team or any of those things that can easily pull on the heartstrings of community members. And so we have to be able to tell that story of revitalization. You have to be able to have that elevator speech just right there at your fingertips of when someone asks, why is the work that you're doing important? You should be able to answer back very quickly and get them on board and get them excited about what that means. So we're creating and enhancing economic vibrancy in the historic core of our community. These are where the memories are made. This is we know that our work is important, but we have to be able to convey that to the rest of the community in very easy, simple terms. And so it's important that we're able to articulate this and have that at our disposal. So you can advance to the next slide. So don't just ask for money, be able to actually tell that story, build that relationship. Something that I think that we have a hard time with as it pertains to fundraising is many times we just go in and say, we got to do the thing. We got to ask for money right there. We know this is someone that could be a potential funder for the organization. And so we go in without trying to first build that relationship with that potential funder. And so it really what that's about is really trying to build an authentic relationship with them and really trying to go in and see what are their motivations and cultivating that relationship with them. Figure out what their motivation is, what's important to them as you as they're thinking about maybe potentially funding the organization, or what is something that's important to them as it pertains to the community. And so you're able to craft that message to what is important to them, either as a company or just personally. And so Keith, you can advance to the next part of the slide here. So I really liked what Liberty has on their website. And so you'll see this actually a couple times during our presentation here, but they are celebrating 20 years of Main Street success. And so this is directly on their website and something they use for their fundraising efforts. And so I'll just go ahead and read it because I really think it's just powerful and good work. And so they say that they have their mission statement there first, Historic Downtown Liberty is a nonprofit, volunteer-driven 501(c)(3) organization, like many of our our mission statements throughout Main Street. But then they really get into their story and their impact as an organization. So they say since 2005, the HDLI Main Street program has worked to create a vibrant downtown where people love to shop, and I love that word in there. People love to shop, dine, and invest through a combination of economic development, creative promotion, and historic preservation, where work to make downtown Liberty an exciting and thriving place for all. As we celebrate 20 years of Main Street success, we invite you to be part of this milestone. I love that line. And so they really set it up. This is the work we've been able to do over the past 20 years and why it's important. And now we need your help in order to continue to make this happen. Your donation helps ensure the continued growth and vitality of our historic district, supporting the preservation of Liberty's unique charm while fostering new opportunities for business and community engagement. And then they have their call to action. Join our mission to make downtown Liberty a place we can all be proud of. Your donation will help sustain our efforts, support community initiatives, and preserve the unique character of our downtown for generations to come. That last line gave me goosebumps. But but be able to tell that story. Why is our work important? Why is this something that they should give money for? It's because we're preserving the historic core of our community for decades, for generations to come, so our future families can spend time in our downtown area. We can go
And
to the
Ben,
next.
well,
Yeah,
Ben, before we go on, I talk about engaging the community in a future section, but
mhm.
I'm signed up for HDLI's newsletter and emails, and I follow them on Instagram. And this same message is being transmitted across multiple channels to reach different audiences and to connect with people. And so I want to say that they're doing a great job. If there's a community to watch and monitor and learn from, I would say that Historic Downtown Liberty is one of those to do that with.
Yeah, and it's kind of piggybacking off of that. They take this message and they display it in different mediums. They'll put it on social media, they have it on their website, and when they're having face-to-face conversations, they use that base there, but then they change that messaging up just a little bit depending on their audience and who they're talking to. So numbers are great as we help to tell our story. We need to say what's the impact of all the volunteer hours, what's that public and private investment that's happened in the past year or the past 5 to 10 years. All of those things are so important. They help tell our story, but we need the bigger picture. We need more of the story. And so we can go to the next one. You need that personalized story. This is actually something that one of the consultants that we use, Ben Mordreau, he uses in a lot of his presentations as we're looking to um, convey that message of why someone should care about the organization. And so he always says, put the emotions before the data. And so if you think about Martin Luther King's March on Washington, he likes to say, no one ever marched on Washington because of a pie chart. It's because of the emotions that came into it. It was because of what they believed in and what they were doing it for that they decided to march onto Washington. And so, as you're crafting that message to potential donors, to the community, make sure it's not just about the numbers and the impact. All of that is so important, but it's not the end all be all and the entire story. It is those businesses and the stories of those people that have opened up those businesses that is important. It's those families that have moved back to the area and been able to spend their time in the downtown area. It's all of those anecdotal type stories that really seem to resonate with people that could potentially fund the organization and also just get excited about your work as a downtown revitalization organization.
Yeah, and
You know,
I like when Ben Mulder presents this because a lot of times when people ask us what is Main Street or what are you as an organization, we tend to go to our projects or our events, not to the why. We're creating a vibrant downtown. We're creating a place that's supporting small business. We're creating a place that's the living room of the community. All those sorts of feel good things. We tend to kind of forget that in our elevator speech, as Ben mentioned earlier. So start with the why, and then get into how we do that with our projects. And so that's what we're going to transition to. Um, Talking about some of the fundraisers, and I know in the intro, several of you mentioned events. I think when you were thinking about fundraising and the hard work that comes with them, but events are a part of fundraising. And at the same time, though, they're bringing our community together and creating that why, those memories for people. And so I'm starting with Christmas or holiday stuff when it comes to fundraising. You know, if we're going to do a tree lighting in our downtown district, why not turn that into some sort of raffle where people buy tickets and they're the person that gets to flip the switch to turn that Christmas tree on? Um, there are ways to turn those community type events into a fundraising component of it. I know several of our communities have done fundraisers for lights. We want to add some additional lighting to our downtown district, and so we do a fundraising campaign that then helps us pay for those lights or features for our holidays. And so that's another way to have sponsorships for those lighting ceremonies, for those projects, for those initiatives related to Christmas, particularly. But there are other holidays that we can tap into, particularly Halloween. And I know Donnie's on here, and it's one of the examples I wanted to use is that they do a haunted tour, a haunted walking tour, sells out in minutes every year. People enjoy it, but it's a great little fundraiser for the organization. Jefferson City has the state prison in their downtown district, and they do tours of that prison all the time. St. Charles, Legends and Lanterns. Washington, Missouri does some haunted walking tours throughout the year. Warrensburg, just not holiday related, but Stories of Downtown, a historic walking tour. And so, various ways to tap into not only your history, but tying it to events, which then can be ticketed events that can help raise money. And less probably time and effort involved in walking tours than, let's say, a whole month of holiday activities. And so, looking at the time commitment with volunteers and what that entails. So I liked this example. I found this online. This is from actually Billings, Montana. They started this during COVID, but started a scavenger hunt. And I never thought of a scavenger hunt as a fundraiser. I know a lot of our folks do architectural scavenger hunts during May for Preservation Month, and there's usually it's not a fundraiser type event. But when I found this, I thought it was really kind of cool. It helps get people out and about in your downtown district, um, and guides them through and educates them and creates an adventure for them. But in Billings, they sell these scavenger hunt kits. So you order a kit, you'll receive it by mail. Um, then you sit down and plan how you're going to do it with your household or your friends. There's puzzles and riddles throughout it to help get you where you need to go, which I thought was fun. It includes not only stops at retailers, but also stops at restaurants or bars. So really gets you out and about. And with this scavenger hunt, you can also buy a coupon book. And the coupon books, I think, were $20, $25, sorry, $25. But it had over $60 worth of coupons in it. So as you were going out to that restaurant, maybe there was a coupon for a buy one, get one at half price. So incentives to not only go out and explore downtown, but to go out and spend money downtown, granted at a discount, but getting people in the door. So I think for a lot of folks, particularly if you have a newer Main Street program or newer businesses in your district, this could be a fun way to help get those customers in the doors of those various businesses. So thought that was a fun event, and actually the coupon book even include free drinks and free desserts at some of these places. So why wouldn't you want to do that? That's a lot of fun. Um, so next, excuse me, talking about those big festivals, those big events that we hold within our downtown districts, great opportunities to raise some funds. And I know some of our Main Street communities raise tens of thousands of dollars with some of their festivals. The two in the middle, the top one is Washington, Missouri, I believe, or Warrensburg. I can't remember now. The bottom one is Lee Summit. These are multi-day events, can raise 20, 30, 40, $50,000. Of course, some of these have been going on forever. But what I want to talk about with festivals is there's different types of festivals to put on. There can be that street fair type festival. There could be some attached to history or the culture of your community. I live in Excelsior Springs. We have mineral water, spring water. So we have Waterfest. Ben's from Chillicothe. They do sliced bread Saturday. So tying it to the history and culture of your community is a great way to do that. Also with events, making sure that we have things for people to do at different age levels. You see the picture on the right. We've got some kids activities there with a foam party. In order to get the community engaged, we need to have multiple things for multiple age groups to draw those crowds and multiple things going on at the same time. And then the different ways to raise funds from that festival are booths, renting booths, booth space for vendors, artists, crafters, food sales. So, you could invite in food vendors and you get a portion of their sales. Carnival, which you can see in the bottom picture there in Lee Summit. You can get a portion of the sales from a carnival, usually at these types of events. But also there's beer or alcohol sales, which some communities are very open to, but can be a great way to raise money for the organization from those sales. So lots of fun things happening within our Main Street districts related to festivals. Next, I want to talk about farm to table dinners. These are very popular right now. This is on the left, Washington, and on the right, St. Charles. A great way to kind of celebrate. Most of these are in the fall, so the end of summer. Many are tied to farmers markets. So that farm to table type event can be also attached to wineries. If you have wineries within your area, they can be invited. Local restaurants participating. I know the one in St. Charles. One restaurant prepares the appetizer, one restaurant prepares the salad, one restaurant prepares the main course, and then another restaurant prepares the desserts. But great fundraising events, great bringing the community again. How do we connect within our community and have fun as an organization? And then usually there's some sort of live entertainment attached to those. And now I'd like to talk about kind of the physical parts of fundraising. These aren't events, so moving into physical aspects of our downtown, but how do we make those campaigns fun and exciting? And so various examples on the screen here of benches and light pole banners and just light poles, planters, murals. All of those are sponsorship activities. So maybe more along the lines of, the previous things I was talking about were for visitors or residents. This is probably more along the lines of organizations or businesses that want to participate and get their name out there as advertising. So sponsorship opportunities for these sorts of things. You can stick a plaque on anything and recognize the sponsor for that. I've seen it even done on hanging flower baskets. I was in Marietta, Ohio, which is where I used to live, and they have little tags hanging off of the hanging baskets for who the sponsor is for that. So you can sponsor anything within our downtown district. So take advantage and think about that. Ben showed Liberty and their campaign for their 20th anniversary. It's a great opportunity to turn that into a fundraising piece, particularly when you're getting up there to 25 and 30 years old. You now have street cred. You have that credibility of being around for a period of time, and people know that it's going to be a good investment. Hopefully, they've seen your results. And that makes them want to give even more because they want to be a part of something that is successful. I'm going to talk in just a few minutes about making it easy, but you can see on the left there, that's Habitat for Humanity. QR code makes it easy for people to give no matter where they are, as long as they have a cell phone with a camera app on it that can do that. But you can also do bottom right, we need to raise $25,000 for whatever that may be. Maybe it's a pocket park. And you can turn that into things like that. Upper right, $25 in 2025. And, we've learned from political campaigns that all of those small donations add up very quickly. And so if you can get 100 people in your community to give you $25, now you've got some dollars for a potential project. And so just think of those things. Small dollar amounts can be very important. I want to share what Warrensburg does as a board of directors. You guys all know Main Street boards are working boards. They are the lead organization, lead individuals responsible for fundraising. They do that through the organization committee, but they are responsible for that because they're responsible for the resources of the organization. So Warrensburg made this a competition amongst their board members. They had some very competitive board members. And so for their annual donor campaign, they divided up the board into two teams. They did a phone-a-thon. They sat down in a room together and called, all the past sponsors or donors from the year before, called all of their friends and relatives and got pledges and followed up with a mailer that they could pop a check in if they wanted to, or sent them a QR code, whatever it would be, but made it a competition. And it got very serious. There were some board members who really wanted to win, so ended up writing a check themselves at the end of the competition to put them over the top. But they made it fun. And kind of had a competition and chided each other a little bit about who was winning and what their numbers were, and did a chart in the office of the progress of those. And so again, make it fun, have some fun with it. Maybe the losing team has to go out and sweep the streets after the festival next time. Kind of add some fun components to it. Okay, we're going to transition to engaging the community. I guess there's one last thing I want to say about some fundraiser things, is that the internet is your research area. I found all kinds of sponsorship opportunities, fundraising opportunities online. Also, follow other Main Street programs. There, Main Street's doing very creative things. So I didn't even talk about a Piccadilly. Piccadilly is a fundraiser that a lot of our Main Street programs use. We probably have a whole new crop of Main Street programs that aren't familiar with Piccadilly's. Ben, we probably need to do some more some education on that. But there's a lot of good stuff happening out there. So follow other Main Street programs to learn from them. But we have a saying: R&D, rip off and duplicate, but also make it your own. Don't exactly mimic what your neighboring Main Street program is doing. Make it your own. Okay, so how do we get the community involved in this? And we alluded to this earlier. Social media is probably the most used vehicle now for Main Street programs to connect with their community. We still have radio, we still have newspapers, we still have those sorts of things to reach out to our communities, and we don't want to ignore those. But I think social media is the top for our Main Street programs. It's a low barrier of entry, low cost. Of course, you can do ads and pay for ads on those social medias, but overall, small barrier of entry. So, pick one or two platforms that you use and do those well. You don't have to do them all, but also think about the audience that you're wanting to reach. And, as we talked about with Liberty, they gauge the messaging to the audience. I think we all know, or if we don't, TikTok tends to be a younger audience than Facebook. And so thinking about the messaging and does it need to change? Just don't duplicate what you're doing on Facebook on every other platform. So here's some stats that I thought were interesting for the top 4 social media channels out there. Facebook by far is the largest, over 3 billion monthly active users. It does cover the largest age group. From 25 to 34 is the key demographic for Facebook. Skews more male, which I didn't know, 56% male, 43% female. Average time spent on there is 32 minutes a day. Has a broad appeal, but especially strong among millennials and Gen X. Great for community updates, event promotion, and nostalgia-driven storytelling is what it's telling me on this stuff I pulled for it. Next, surprised me, was YouTube. YouTube has 2.5 billion monthly active users. The age group is the highest percentage is 18 to 29 with 93% usage. 30 to 49 is 84% usage, and 50 to 64 in age is 86% usage. Again, very surprising to me. Universally popular across all age groups. Video storytelling. Very important, I think, for campaigns, particularly if we're doing a big project, could be a good way to convey the message and get that out there. And again, you can then share YouTube videos on other social media channels if you want. Also can show behind the scenes content and showcasing revitalization projects visually. Instagram is third. at 2 billion monthly active users. 18 to 34 is the largest age group. Um, Gender slightly leans more to female users. The audience is highly visual. Again, I think that's perfect for us as Main Streets, showing the fun things that we're doing or showing the stories that we're doing. And of course, videos are becoming more important on both Instagram and Facebook. Appeals to younger audiences and lifestyle-driven psychographics. Great for showcasing downtown aesthetics, events, and local makers. And then fourth is that TikTok that I mentioned earlier. It's very dominant with the 16 to 24-year-olds. There's about 1.5 billion monthly active users. About 3 hours is spent by Gen Z females. It's interesting they called that out. Fast-paced, trend-driven, highly creative, perfect for quirky fundraisers, challenges, and showcasing personality-driven content. So I know Donnie's on here, and Lee Summit has done some fun TikToks with one of their previous board presidents, Dave Eames, and he's become a TikTok sensation. So, again, think about your audience, think about your message and what you're trying to convey, but pick one or two and go all in and invest in those. Other ways to engage with your community. Of course, we mentioned the QR codes. We want to make it easy for them to engage with us, to give us money. We should have areas for them to donate on our website, through our social media channels, on our brochures, on our flyers. Everywhere we should have a place for them to do that. If you do a farmer's market, do the big sidewalk sandwich board, and this event brought to you by, and have your name on there, and have a little QR code in the bottom for them to donate. And I'm going to have another QR code on the other side of how they can volunteer. Just another call out for volunteering. But then we also have ways to recognize them. I think everybody's probably familiar with the brick fundraising campaigns. I've done a couple of those here in Excelsior Springs. I want you to know they're not as easy as you think they are. You have to have a plan to execute those. You think in your head, oh, it would be easy to sell 100 bricks. It takes a plan, it takes some execution, it takes concerted efforts to make that happen. But that can be a way to recognize donors, and particularly at a certain level, because there's a cost involved with those bricks. On the left, walls where you put recognize folks. You probably see those in some hospitals and different places that have done campaigns to raise funds for their organizations. That's a way to recognize them. So think about fun ways to do that. But also, the top right, this is in Marceline. This is at a dinner where everybody had to pay an amount of money to attend that event, but they had an area that you could memorialize that event with some Disney characters, and it's kind of your takeaway of, oh, hey, I got this exclusive opportunity to get a picture with my Disney characters at this fundraising event that I attended. So just think about different ways, and Ben's going to talk more about recognizing and thank yous here in just a second. So let's move into that piece of it. How do we celebrate, thank our donors, and appreciate them, and then we'll wrap up. And I just want to remind folks, if you have some questions, pop those into the chat or into the Q&A.
Yep. So like Keith mentioned, it's so important to recognize our donors because this can also become a celebration. This is what makes it fun for them after the fact too, is, hey, I'm continuing to get celebrated in my efforts to help fund the organization's efforts. And so I wanted to talk about just some different ways to do that that can be effective in trying to celebrate and recognize those donors. First, it goes back to building a relationship with that donor. And so as you're having these conversations with these people, you can get a sense of what means the most to them in order to get recognized. Is it more of a public showing where you're putting it on Facebook, you're putting it on your website, and all of these very visible ways that you're showing that, hey, X, Y, and Z bank gave money to the organization's efforts? Or is it more privately? Is it more, hey, this thank you for your efforts through a handwritten note? I always encourage to, as you can see on the screen, get personal. Handwritten notes are something that I think in this digital age have gone away in some cases, and I think more organizations need to bring them back into the fold because they can truly go a long way. It lets people know that hey, this person is truly thinking of me. It's not just trying to put something on social media. They are taking the time and the effort to handwrite a note and to deliver it to me either in person or through the mail. So don't be afraid to go analog. Again, newsletters and social media recognition is great, but don't be afraid to go personal. And then I posted a picture of that sliced bread days that Keith mentioned earlier on the right. That was a good lead in there. Because something Keith and I were actually talking about that could be a really fun, effective strategy is, hey, does this project that is being funded benefit families? Does it benefit kids? Are you putting those amenities in the downtown that could benefit those age groups? Why not get some of those kids that were directly positively affected by the particular project that they funded to write the thank you note. That can go a long way and add some, again, that personalization to that thank you, that recognition, that celebration process. And then I put into the point, which is something that National Main Street puts together as kind of a listserv. And so actually, Kathy LaPlante responded with a story that she had happened to her not too long ago. And so this is not necessarily a Main Street specific story, but she said she got a special invite for an organization's annual meeting. And so while that isn't necessarily fun or different or exciting, what they did is they actually noted her as someone that has been a contributor to that organization for 25 years. And so she thinks that Main Street programs can do more with that. And so if you have someone that's a long-term fundraiser that's been funding the organization for 5, 10, 15 years consecutively, call that out personally, publicly. Again, whatever makes you think make the most difference for that particular individual or that company, that organization that is funding your efforts. Make sure to call that out because that is a long-term standing of support for the organization's efforts. So make sure to celebrate that and recognize that and do it in a fun way as well.
And Kathy said she'll probably continue to giving them money for another 25 years.
Goes a long way for being able to keep them around a little bit. So I actually found this graphic on boardsource.org. And if you're not plugged into boardsource.org, they have a lot of free materials on board management, nonprofit management. And so they came up with this graphic based off of a study that they conducted nationwide of nonprofits. And so the study was donors inclined to give again based on different factors. And so it was broken down into these four different categories. And I'll go through all of these four. But I'll go ahead and I'll start with the first one here on the next slide. So the first one that was on the left there is 34% of people said they would be more willing to give again if they received a fast gift acknowledgement. And so what that means is we're not just sitting on it for months on end and not thanking them because that can have adverse effects to our donor retention and donor celebration efforts. If we hold the event and then or hold that particular project and then don't actually acknowledge their gift towards that particular effort. That can turn people off. And so what it does is it organizations, people, companies will say, well, why do they need my money? What's the point of actually giving money to the Main Street organization if they're not just going to recognize me for my efforts within the week or shortly after that project was completed. And so I included an example from Lebanon, actually. And so what this is what they do as part of the newsletter. I would always, again, encourage you to go even more personalized with a note. But they do this. with each one of the newsletters for anybody that donated in that past month. They recognize it in their newsletter towards the end, and list out all of those people, all of those companies that gave to the program over that time. But make sure to have that speedy gift acknowledgement to get people in the fold and to get them recognized just for their efforts as well. So we can go to the next one. So the next one is 39% of people. So this is the second most from that graphic that I showed you, said that an email or text stating the gift's impact on the nonprofit was effective. And so at least some acknowledgement is great. Again, I'm always about that personalized acknowledgement, but if you at least send them a personalized email or a text and then put in there, this is the impact that we had with this particular project. We were able to have so and so many flower beds that we were able to do. We were able to do so and so with the money that you were able to give to the organization. That can go a long way. And so I brought in an example from Liberty previously, but again, like Keith said, they're doing some really good things in the fundraising front here. And so this is actually on their website. They call it their HDLI donor wall. And so they list on there all of these different levels of these investment into the organization. And so they put these with links to various companies that have given to um, to the organization over time. And so this is, again, it's not an email or a text necessarily, but it's still trying to be very public with thanking people for their donation to the organization's efforts. And again, this can go a long way towards not only donor retention, recognition, but keeping them around and celebrating their efforts to fund downtown
And let's and
revitalization.
and let's be honest, it's a little bit of peer pressure for folks who don't see their name up there, and FOMO. Hey, my name's not up there. I need to make sure my name gets up there. But it is important to provide that recognition, but also showing how many people are giving that other folks go, yeah, I probably should be on that list too.
We did that when I was with the program in Chillicothe. We had three banks in our downtown, and they would
Mhm.
compete against each other
Yes,
because
exactly.
they didn't want the other bank to give more than they did. So they would
That's
either
right.
always match it or go above them and
That's right.
essentially um, have that challenge issued to the other banks in the downtown that, hey, we supported them at this level. What are you going to do? So
Friendly competition. Friendly
it worked out for
competition.
us. We'll always take their money. That's fine.
Yeah.
And then the top one on here was 41%. And so this is again that personalized communication explaining the support's impact. And so this is personally delivering and iterating not just over social media, but really trying to be intentional about going to them in person, having a phone call with them about the impact of their donation. And so how their funding made that difference. And so what project did their funding go towards if it wasn't necessarily towards a specific project? Maybe they were just donating towards the organization efforts. You can say, this is actually what your funding was for, and this is the impact that was made because of it. And so you'll see on here, many Main Street organizations will use an annual report. And so this is an example from Brookfield, but a lot of our Main Street programs use an annual report just to talk about what they've done here in the past year. But what this helps on the donor front, as well as showcase to the community all the great things that the organization in downtown has done throughout the years, it shows donors this is what the money has been used for in the past year, or this is what the money will be used for in the coming year, and either allows them to specifically donate towards a specific cause or say, wow, I there's so many things happening with the organization and in downtown. Of course I want to donate towards those efforts. And then it makes that cyclical and say, okay, we were able to use that money again in 2024 for these different purposes that we just talked to you about. Here's our plans for 2025. And so it helps build that relationship. It helps build validity to the organization's efforts as well. If you specifically call out in there, these are the things that we're using your money for, your donations. And so it's not just we're funding downtown revitalization. This is how we're going through those downtown revitalization efforts. And this is actually what we're using that funding for. We can go to the next one. And so 29%, this is four from that list that I showed you, is that the organization makes it easy to continue giving. Keith talked about this a little bit earlier, but I wanted to bring in an example from Downtown Lee Summit. And so this is actually from their website. And so they have different options in order to actually donate on their website. They have an option if you just want to give a one-time gift at certain levels there, $50 all the way up to 1,000. There we go. Or a monthly gift. And so you can give at a monthly rate of $5 up to $100 or $425 or another amount in there too. So being able to spread out that hit, so it's not just $50 all at once. But something I think I really like is their annual donation. And so they're able to make sure that they renews people's donation on an annual basis. They want to give $50 every year. We're going to give them the opportunity to give $50 every year, and so it allows them to continue to give that over and over again. So the the purpose of this slide is we just want to make it as easy as possible for people to be able to donate to our organization. And so it's cutting out some of those barriers that people potentially could have for donating. And so if the donor is a recurring one, thank them for the donation and note the amount that they donated in the previous year. Hey, you donated $500 in the past year. And we'd love if you were able to do that again because we have big plans for the future of downtown. So take some of that legwork out for donors, remind them what they donated previously, and ask if they'd be willing to do it again. The next slide.
Great. Thanks, Ben. I dropped into the chat for everyone. Excuse me. These three handbooks. One is by Michigan. Actually, two are by Michigan. The first one is an older publication, but still some good stuff in it. The middle one is from Oregon, Main Streets on donors and supporters. And then the one on the right is actually a collaboration between Michigan and Iowa on fundraising. And so popped all of those into the chat for you to take a look at. But there are just tons and tons of ideas out there on sponsorships, donors, campaigns, events, all different stuff that can be a fundraiser for your organization. And try to think of ways, if you have a current event or project or something that's going on, how do we turn that into a fundraiser? How do we involve the community in that project or that event and get them engaged and think about it? But always with that underlying tone of we've got to have fun. If people are volunteering time to us, we want to make sure that they have a good experience and we want to make sure that it's fun and light. Some of the stuff we do, particularly with economic vitality, can be a little frustrating because it's a longer term project and it's, property owners and business owners and things like that. How do we take the other things that we do within Main Street and give them that fun spin so that people are having a good time and enjoying themselves? And taking a moment to celebrate after we do those things can also be the fun aspect of it. Doing a project. And when the project is complete, are we doing a ribbon cutting? Are we doing a celebration? Are we doing a champagne toast? Whatever it may be, to thank the community for participating with us, but to celebrate the work that we've done also. People want to be part of something that's fun. They don't want to be part of an organization that's not having fun. And I think we can all think of organizations within our communities or that we've been a part of that we're like, oh my gosh, I'm not coming back next month because this is they're too serious. We want to have fun. I've been there. Find ways to celebrate. Thank the donors, thank the volunteers, thank the key partners. And before we depart, while you're thinking about your question, and please provide any questions you have in there, we're finished with the presentation right now. But I want you to share one fundraising idea that you're going to try for your organization that you learned about today. Share one idea, one thought that you're going to implement within your Main Street program in the future. So if you would share that in the chat. And then also, as Ben said, pop any questions that you may have into the chat or the Q&A piece of it. All right, Ben, any final thoughts?
I don't think so, other than, I mean, this is just a short snippet on fundraising. There's so many other ways to have fun with fundraising. And Keith and I were able to cover here in the past hour. The work is never done with trying to get effective fundraising for a Main Street organization. And those things just change and morph over time, depending on the organization, depending on your community. And so with this subject, I find it so important just to continue to learn, to gain ideas, which I think that's great. Hopefully you're able to do today and just gather some ideas or gather some methods on effective fundraising. And so continue to learn, continue to see what others are doing out there and what's been effective for their organization.
Yep, that was perfect. Thank you, Ben. With that, we will end this webinar. You guys all have a great day, and we'll see you next time.
Everyone.